You know what they taught us in school, right? The Nazis were evil incarnate fanatics who crawled out of some historical void, built a war machine from scratch, and tried to swallow the world whole. Clean narratives simply inconvenient, but here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. Hitler didn't fund the Third Reich with hatred alone. You can't manufacture tanks with propaganda. You can't fuel bombers with speeches. And Germany, in 1933, economically destroyed, drowning in debt, unemployment at 30%. So where did it all come from? The answer isn't in Berlin. It's in New York. Wall Street, to be specific. And what I'm about to show you isn't speculation, it's documented. Filed away in corporate archives and congressional investigations that most people will never read. Because the truth is messy. It implicates companies you probably gave money to today, and it reveals a pattern that's still playing out right now, in real time, with different players but the same playbook. Stay with me here, because by the end of this, you'll understand why your history teacher conveniently skipped this chapter, and why the same corporations that profited from genocide still shape your world today. Let's rewind to 1933. Hitler's just seized power. Germany's economy is, honestly, in ruins. The Treaty of Versailles crushed them with reparations. The hyperinflation of the 1920s evaporated savings like morning fog. People are starving. The Reichsmark is essentially worthless. And Hitler's promising to make Germany great again. But, and this is crucial, you can't build a military-industrial complex on empty promises. You need steel, oil, cash, mountains of it. Germany had none of those things. So here's where the story gets interesting. Picture Wall Street in the 1920s. American banks are absolutely flush with capital, looking for returns, and they spot an opportunity in post-war Germany. Yeah, Germany lost the war. Yeah, they owe billions. But American financiers see potential. Enter the Dawes Plan of 1924. J.P. Morgan, Dillon, Reed, and Co. Chase National Bank. They restructured German debt, floated bonds, and made Germany completely dependent on American capital. Between 1924 and 1931, over $475 million flowed from the United States to Germany. That's roughly $8 billion in today's money. Think about that for a second. These weren't charitable donations. These were loans with interest, with strings attached, with American bankers literally managing Germany's economy through the DOS committee. And when Hitler takes over, he inherits this entire financial infrastructure, and American banks don't pull out. They double down. But wait, it gets so much worse. Standard Oil. You know them. They eventually became Exxon, owned by the Rockefellers. In the 1930s, they made a deal with IG Farben, the German chemical giant that later manufactured Zyklon B for the gas chambers. Joint ventures, technology sharing, and the big one, synthetic fuel. Here's the problem. Germany faced no oil. Zero. They're landlocked. No colonies. No access to Middle Eastern oil fields. So how did the Luftwaffe fly? How did Panzer tanks roll across Europe for years? Standard Oil gave them the technology to make synthetic fuel from coal, the hydrogenation process. Without that innovation, Germany's military runs out of gas in 6 months. The Blitzkrieg doesn't happen. The invasion of France stalls. The Holocaust requires transportation, and transportation requires fuel. Standard Oil knew exactly what they were doing. They had representatives in Germany. They received reports, and they kept the partnership running even after 1939, even after Poland, even after war was declared. Let that sink in for a moment. An American company that became one of the world's largest oil corporations gave Hitler the technology to fuel his war machine. Now, let me tell you about IBM. Yeah, the computer company. They didn't just sell punch card machines to Germany. They customized them, specifically designed for tracking Jews. Every concentration camp had IBM machines processing data, prisoner numbers, transport schedules, death counts, work assignments, who lives, who dies, all processed on IBM equipment. IBM's German subsidiary Duhamag maintained these machines throughout the war. They sent technicians, provided updates. And IBM headquarters in New York, they collected royalties. Every punch card sold, every machine, at least IBM got paid. An American company profited from organizing genocide. They didn't pull triggers. Sure, they just made mass murder efficient, industrial, trackable, turned human suffering into data points. And after the war, no prosecution, no real consequences. They're still one of the biggest tech companies on Earth. I mean, think about the cold calculation required for that. Engineers designing systems, managers approving contracts, accountants processing payments, all while knowing they had to know what those machines were being used for. Henry Ford. The man was a raging published a newspaper called the Dearborn Independent that blamed Jews for literally everything communism, banking, war, you name it. He published the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a completely fabricated conspiracy text. Hitler loved him, kept Ford's portrait on his desk, called him an inspiration. And Ford's German factories, Ford Work, they didn't stop production when war broke out. They ramped it up, building trucks for the Wehrmacht, engines for German military vehicles, using slave labor from concentration camps. After America entered the war in 1941, Ford Work was classified as an essential military contractor by the German government, an American company's subsidiary, building weapons for the enemy. Here's where it gets absolutely insane. After the war, Ford demanded compensation from the U.S. government for Allied bombing damage to his German factories. He wanted American taxpayers to pay him for damage done to plants that were building Nazi trucks. The audacity is breathtaking. General Motors, same story. Their German subsidiary, Opel, manufactured the trucks that carried Wehrmacht soldiers across Europe, made engines for Luftwaffe planes. By 1939, Opel was producing half of all German trucks and one-third of German armored vehicles. The Blitzkrieg that destroyed Poland and France rolled on General Motors' wheels. GM executives maintained control throughout the war. And after Pearl Harbor, when America is officially at war with Germany, GM's Opel factories kept producing. The company claimed they couldn't control foreign subsidiaries. Translation: we're making too much money to care. And after the war, GM sued those government for $33 million in damages to their German plants. They wanted compensation for Allied bombs hitting factories that were making Nazi war machines. And they won. Got paid. Chase National Bank, now JPMORGAN, Chase. In 1940, after the Nazis occupied Paris, Chase's Paris branch froze Jewish accounts, helped the Nazis liquidate assets, actively participated in stripping wealth from families being sent to death camps. The bank operated in Nazi-occupied France until 1944. That's 3 years after Pearl Harbor. 3 years of an American bank helping Nazis steal from Jews while American soldiers were dying to liberate Europe. Documents surfaced in the 1990s showing Chase executives knew they got reports. They made decisions, and they kept the branch open because it was profitable. DuPont sold chemicals to Germany. Union Banking Corporation, run by Prescott Bush. Yes, the father of future President George H.W. Bush, held Nazi assets, financed German steel production. ITT Corporation sold communication equipment to the German military, had representatives negotiating with Nazis throughout the war. And here's what really gets me. These weren't rogue operations. These were board-level decisions. CEOs knew. Shareholders profited, and the U.S. government looked the other way until public pressure became too loud to ignore. Let's talk numbers, because the scale is genuinely staggering. IG Farben used over 80,000 slave laborers from Auschwitz alone, worked them to death, making synthetic rubber and fuel, and IBM's machines tracked every single one of them. Ford Work produced 78,000 trucks for the Wehrmacht. Opel made 29,000. Together, that's over a third of German military logistics. Without American trucks, the Nazis don't conquer France, don't reach Moscow, don't transport Jews to camps. The Holocaust required industrial efficiency, and American corporations provided it for profit. Here's the part that should make your blood boil. After the war, none of these companies were really held accountable. There were trials, the Nuremberg industrialist trials, prosecuted IG Farben and Krupp executives. But the American companies? Protected, because the US government needed them for post-war reconstruction. The Marshall Plan required industrial capacity. The Cold War required manufacturing. So Ford, GM, IBM, they got government contracts, Marshall Plan funding, and the files got sealed, classified, buried. It took 50 years for researchers to uncover the full scope. In 1998, lawsuits forced disclosures. Survivors sued. Documents surfaced, letters, memos, contracts, proving executives knew, proving they profited. And the settlements? Pathetic. In 2000, German industry created a $5 billion fund for slave laborers. Ford and GM contributed $20 million combined. That's pocket change compared to what they made. IBM paid nothing, denied knowledge until the 2060 years after the fact, and the event then settled privately. No admission, no apology. Just make it go away money. Now here's where it gets really twisted. This wasn't unique. It's the pattern. American corporations doing business with monsters because the profit's too good to pass up. And it's happening right now. China. Apple. Nike. Tesla. All manufacturing in Xinjiang, where Uyghur Muslims are in concentration camps. Forced labor. Surveillance. Cultural genocide. The U.S. State Department officially calls it genocide. And American companies. They lobby against sanctions, argue supply chains are too complex, say they can't verify labor practices. It's the same script. In the 1930s, it was we can't control foreign subsidiaries. Today, its supply chains are complicated. Different words, same excuse. Same profit motive. Apple made $383 billion in revenue last year. A chunk of that comes from Chinese manufacturing using forced labor, and they fight every attempt to regulate it. Google developed a censored search engine for China called Dragonfly. Would have filtered results, hidden Tiananmen Square, blocked human rights information. They canceled it after employee revolt, but the intent was clear. Access to 1 billion users is worth compromising on freedom. Facebook's algorithms were used to organize genocide in the Rohingya massacre. Over 25,000 dead was coordinated through Facebook posts. The company apologized, promised better moderation, and kept operating in Myanmar because shutting down means losing users, losing ad revenue. Oil companies continue doing business with Saudi Arabia despite Khashoggi's murder. Despite Yemen being bombed with American weapons, arms manufacturers sell to dictatorships, knowing exactly how those weapons will be used. Tech companies build surveillance tools for authoritarian regimes. Cisco built the Great Firewall of China. Oracle sells database software used to track this. It's not identical to the 1930s, but the moral calculus is exactly the same. Profit versus principles, and profit wins. Every single time. The executives today use the same language their predecessors used. We're following all applicable laws. We're committed to human rights. We're engaging to create positive change from within. It's corporate speak, designed to deflect, to reassure shareholders while the money keeps flowing. And you know what? It works. Because most people don't dig deeper. They see the polished PR campaigns, the diversity initiatives, the sustainability reports. They don't see the supply chain audits that are deliberately incomplete. They don't see the lobbying efforts to weaken regulations. They don't see the legal teams working to shield executives from accountability. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. Corporations don't have morals. They have shareholders. And shareholders want returns, quarterly earnings, stock prices. If doing business with a genocidal regime is legal and profitable, they'll do it. The executives will justify it. We're creating jobs. We can't compete if we don't. It's complicated. And they'll donate to charity, fund museums, sponsor schools, polish their image, just like Ford and GM did, just like IBM did. You can build hospitals with one hand and gas chambers with the other. As long as the hospital's visible and the gas chambers are hidden, people remember you as a hero. That's the game. So what do you do with this information? First, understand that World War II wasn't just soldiers and bombs. It was financed. American banks restructured German debt. American companies built German trucks, planes, fuel. American technology tracked victims. Without Wall Street, Hitler doesn't rebuild. Without Ford and GM, the Wehrmacht doesn't roll. Without IBM, the Holocaust isn't industrialized. They didn't wear swastikas, but they enabled everything for profit. Second, accountability is a joke. Most executives died rich. Most companies paid pennies in settlements decades later, and they're still operating. Still profiting. The pattern continues because consequences don't exist. Third, watch who you give money to. That iPhone in your pocket might be assembled by Uyghurs in camps. Those Nikes, same. That Tesla. Musk does business with Chinese surveillance firms. Your dollars fund this, not intentionally, but they do, and companies count on you not caring enough to stop. Fourth, this isn't conspiracy. It's documented. Congressional investigations, lawsuits, declassified documents. It's all public. But it's not taught, not discussed, because the companies involved still have power, still lobby, still control narratives. If this is making you angry, if you're realizing your history class left out the most important part, good. Because this story doesn't end in 1945. It repeats. Different countries, different products, same profit motive, same excuses. And unless people know, unless this gets loud, it'll keep happening. The same families that profited from Hitler still run the world. Different names, same bloodlines, same playbook. We just stopped paying attention. History isn't finished. It's just gotten better at hiding.